Music, dance, rhythm, ritual gets us beyond little local consciousness. Rhythm sets up another rhythm in the brain. It sets up another rhythm in the body. Change the music and you change the mind. Change the music, change the rhythm, and already consciousness then goes into another stratum, another level, another possibility.
So Tiger Woods going to some ceremony like this at a young age or now in his coming up on age 50, I think that would be a helpful thing. And I think the shaman world, the healer world, the medicine world, it's becoming vogue like yoga has grown. I think this type of
Yeah.
thinking is becoming more prevalent. And I think people will find that the vibration is more powerful than the pill.
So a quick story here. So I go to college. I decided to go to college at the very last minute. Got into college, and and I had run cross country in high school and loved it. You get to kind of run through the woods, and it's like parkour. We had a really rough course in high school, up and down orchards, hills, that sort of thing.
Where was
So
that?
I get to college. It was amazing. And then we get to college, and the coach was all about winning, and he'd have a circle up and pray to win, to beat the other team, and that was his mindset. And everything was about winning, and we overtrained. And what happened to me was I felt disillusioned, and a lot of the other my teammates did too. And so the next year there was no team. I quit. Yeah, I think your life outside of that sport recapitulates, how you feel about your sport, as you're doing it. And I guess it's any activity, any practice, meditation, like I said, stamp collecting, climbing in my case or in Alex's case, or golf, boxing. It's hard to have a life that is completely vacuumed and siloed off from the rest of what you do, because that mindset follows you everywhere.
Hi there, folks. Sifu Slim here, coming to you live from West Palm Beach, Florida. And I'm not too far away from Jupiter, Florida, which is a place where there are 3,500 current and former professional athletes living in this beautiful community near the beach. One of those athletes is someone I've followed since 1994, and his name is Tiger Woods. He's broken endless records on the PGA Tour, on the Junior Tour, on the Amateur Tour, and he's also broken himself over the course of the last 20 years. In my opinion, hitting too many buckets of balls, doing too much training, and then not being focused in the way he handles the balance, which is an important part of the life of an athlete. We learn this in yoga. We learn this in martial arts. We learn that from empathetic and caring parents and therapists. And we learn that from listening to ourselves, which comes from having a calm, quiet, grounded daily program of connection of mind, body, and spirit. So before we get into our analysis of Tiger Woods, human performance, hypnosis, putting yourselves into trances, I'm going to ask Fletch Taylor to introduce himself, tell us where he is, and give us a short snippet of what he's currently working on.
Thanks, Sifu, for the auspicious introduction. Yeah, I'm Fletch Taylor, and I am Santa Barbara, and I divide my time between Santa Barbara and the mountains in northern Washington State, the Cascades. We have a place there. And I'm a psychiatrist. Also a writer, a researcher. Been doing extreme sports for a long time, actually since I was 7. And one of my favorite go-tos is extreme alpinism, mountaineering, climbing, that sort of thing. And I love it, and I'm still rolling in that direction. Yeah, thanks for the introduction and having me on.
Wonderful. Glad to have you here. And what I consider a calm disposition. You can tell me if that's because of all the training and all the different things that you focus your attention on, or by nature at age 6, were you what your parents would have considered a calm disposition type of a young fellow?
Yeah, I suspect you're right. Self-analysis is always something that's interesting, because the image in the mirror is not your true self. But yeah, and my mother still says that that's so much a part of who I am, and a part of who she was. And yeah, I think a movement has quite a bit to do with it. In movement there can be stillness, and that's in the Tao. It's in the Buddhist tradition, and it's in the tradition of 5 rhythms. There's I've trained with Lucia Horan, who was in Esalen Institute, and that's one of the things she told me is within those rhythms is that calm center. And I think it all chips in to make me who I am, disposition wise.
Nice. I'm glad to connect with another calm person. I'm going to hit the share screen and we'll tap into the training of Tiger Woods from an unconscious mind perspective by a licensed psychologist who is trained in the military in the Green Beret techniques of how to kill, how not to be seen, how to focus deep and dark, and how to win, basically. And so let's take a look at what this video says about Tiger Woods.
Earl wondered what would happen if he used the same techniques on his son.
Ready, relax.
He hired a military psychiatrist who could reprogram Tiger like a computer.
Relax. Awake. No pain.
This man was Captain Jay Brunzer. Brunzer embarked on a bizarre and extraordinary program to hypnotize Tiger before he played. In a rare interview, Tiger talked about how he would forget whole sections of tournaments.
I tend to have these blackout moments where I don't remember. I know I was there, but I don't remember actually performing the golf shot.
Brunzer's techniques produced extraordinary results. But is it possible that the great moments we saw, Tiger knew nothing about? I wanted to find out more about this hypnosis. To meet someone who was on the green with Tiger and saw it work up close.
We're driving just a couple of miles out of Augusta to a place called Sand Hill, which is basically the caddies' ghetto, the black caddies' ghetto. And I'm going there to meet a guy called Tommy Burnt Biscuits, who was Tiger's first caddy. Tommy.
Yes.
I'm Jack.
How you doing?
Oh, yeah. He had this Jay Brunzer guy.
Jay was, I think Jay was the man. I don't know why Tiger got rid of it. This man had Tiger hitting shots. Like, oh, unbelievable. It was hypnotism. This kid would get his dad out there.
Yeah.
About 30, 40 yards right there pole, and he hit 2 and 3 irons around his head, over his head. Dead stand right there. Never would hit him. But that close.
So he was hitting all around Earl?
All around Earl.
Without hitting him?
Not hitting.
So it's almost like throwing knives at the circus,
Exactly.
you know that?
Exactly. Unbelievable. Never seen anything like that.
So can you imagine that? You know, the knife throwing. I've actually watched the documentary and read some articles on the knife throwing that goes back to probably the 1500s or maybe before. And there were definitely injuries. People can't be on all the time. They practice after they haven't slept well. They're aging. There's a stress in their life. The man throwing the knives is dating the woman receiving him, and they may have a friction. So all kinds of things cause that woman, if it was a man and a woman doing it, to receive some knife wounds, you know, and probably there's probably a record of some dying in the process. So here's Tiger at age 20, 22, hitting these balls, 2-iron. So that for him is a 250-yard shot or maybe even more around his father, who's probably in his 50s and you know, former Green Beret, I believe. And so that's the practice that these guys are doing. I don't know if Jay Brunza, the psychologist, told them to do that, but that's what the kind of stuff I believe Tiger's father was challenging him to do.
Yeah, mind control. It's so much a part of so many different sports, and there's so much carryover between those kinds of repetitive motions and what we go through in our heads, both emotionally and cognitively. A lot of those same principles, I think, apply.
So in neuroscience, have you seen the electrodes or the scans where they show the lighting up of the different portions of the neurology based on stimulus and then maybe based on being in a trance, what lights up, what allows that focus, or is it a diminishing of all the other focal points that allows you to do what people do when they're in a trance?
Well, for example, there are fMRI, functional MRI recordings, which measures brain activity that have been done on super athletes. And one of them is, his name is Alex Honnold, and he's the person that you hear about who solos these climbs like El Capitan and Half Dome without ropes.
Yeah.
And they put him into a situation where he had to focus and watch something that's terrifying for most people, and it was movies of being in the heights, and looking down, and for a lot of people would have a vertiginous experience, become dizzy. And the part of his brain that was remarkable in terms of activity was the amygdala, the flight or fight center of the brain. It has other functions too. And it was cool as a cucumber. Whereas, the controls, most people would find that, it was lit up, hotter than an oiled haystack in a prairie fire, as my father would say. So, that's an example of a kind of contrast. And some of that, of course, is his focus. Some of it's probably genetic as well.
His mom was, I believe, French or a French teacher, I think in Carmichael, California, which is near Sacramento. And I was a French teacher for a little bit up in that same area, but I didn't know her. But I've watched that famous movie about him scaling Half Dome, and I couldn't believe it. And all of his friends he mentioned, and then the videographer who's a climber, all of his friends eventually perish, doing their climbs. And I don't know if he's still doing the same daredevil feats that he used to, but as last I heard, he was still with us.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Sifu Slim, author of The Aging Athlete. In this book, you're going to get to hear about two different groups of former high-performance athletes. One group, which is made up of 90% of the former athletes, does not do physical activity on a regular basis and tends to suffer the consequences of a sedentary lifestyle. The other group, which is made up of 10% of the former athletes, is doing physical activity on a regular basis and tends to thrive through the aging process, or at least has a better chance at coping with the aging process. We could have taken these folks to a lab and done all kinds of tests on them. Instead, we slowed them down and sat them down and asked them, in their own words, to describe why they're wired the way they are, so that we all former athletes and non-athletes can use some of their inspirational and motivational and mindset lessons in our own lives. I hope you pick up a copy today. You can go to theagingathlete.com. And when you have a chance to read it, I'd love to hear back from you to find out what your thoughts are on the stories of these aging athletes.
He was still with us.
Yeah, when I last spoke with him, he had moved to Nevada, outside Las Vegas, and still living there and still soloing. But actually, most of his climbs are with a rope, and it's after he's had a chance to study and rehearse the routes with the rope. That's usually when he'll circle back around and see how it feels to do without ropes. And it's serious for him, but it's also something that is a lot of fun. He gets so much satisfaction out of it, and he's able to find this kind of quiet, still place in his mind.
Is the movie called Free Solo?
I think it is. Yeah, Alone on the Wall, I think, is another movie about his. That might be the book about his solo of Half Dome.
Mm-hmm. Over on Tiger Woods, I was thinking about how we are programmed partially by the things that we're raised with. So if you take a look at the life of a person, let's say an athlete like Tiger, you're raised, you're educated, you're coached, and in my opinion, when it can go too far or it can go correctly, there's the word allowed. So when a coach finally gives you free rein to do your own thing, and that can happen at age 6. It doesn't mean you have to go through 22 years of coaching, but they allow you to do certain things. But there's another part of allowing where it means your behavior off the field, off the golf course, out of the boxing ring, that can be detrimental to you. So 3 people that are easy to look at would be the oldest one would be Michael Jackson, allowed to do whatever he want because he became a multimillionaire at a relatively young age. Mike Tyson, same thing happened. His coach, who was only there once a week, Customato, passed away, and then he was already getting a lot of allowances by Customato, and there's all the documentaries and Mike Tyson talk about this. He wasn't broken down and made to adhere to the rules of society because Customato was old and sick, and he wanted to have one more heavyweight champion like Floyd Patterson, who he had in the 60s. He wanted to have one more heavyweight champion before he died. That gave him kind of a will to live. So there's 2. And then Tiger Woods would be a 3rd one. In this case, they're all Black people, and I don't want that to sound like I'm picking on them. I could pick out lots of people on the other side. But there are 3 people I've studied a lot, and I've watched a lot of their videos, and I've been a fan of theirs also. So the being allowed part, I drew up another list of 3 points. You can become cruel, you can suffer denial, and you can suffer low accountability for your actions. So that's where I wanted to turn over the floor to Fletch and see if he could weigh in on some of this coaching modality without the accountability.
Yeah, I think to do most things well, at least the person has to set some kind of limits for themselves about what they think is going to work for them, and those can change over time. But it seems like the people that get the most out of it, whatever activity or sport they're doing, are people that have at least considered that and thought about it on a conscious level. It might not make them a world champion, but they may have a much, much more fun time and get much more enjoyment out of whatever physical activity they're pursuing, including golf, or free soloing, or bungee jumping, or stamp collecting. I think a lot of the same principles apply. Is setting those limitations and having it be intentional. Where do I want to take this, and how does it reflect the way I want to live outside of that particular sport?
Alex Honnold. And one of the searches, when you type in Alex and free solo, the next word that's high in the rankings is death. So people like me probably go on there every few years and goes, he's still alive? Remember that movie
Right.
back in 2019-ish? Is he still with us? Because, his girlfriend who was living in the van with him didn't
Yeah.
buckle the thing in properly. He landed on his back. Well, what's happened to Alex since then? So that's interesting that death creeps in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think your life outside of that sport recapitulates how you feel about your sport, as you're doing it. And I guess it's any activity, any practice, meditation, like I said, stamp collecting, climbing in my case or in Alex's case, or golf, boxing. It's hard to have a life that is completely vacuumed and siloed off from the rest of what you do, because that mindset follows you everywhere.
So the idea, Fletch, of my third book, which is called Raising a Child Athlete, ? Things you need to know, is about raising child athletes, trying to minimize the fallout that invariably occurs when you do things to an excess. You'll injure your mind, body, and spirit. And when you injure one of those, they also translate to injuring the other one or all three. And then you have a fallout that could be, now I need my family, my significant other to take care of me. There need to be financial resources to do that. And I may be causing trouble if it's just a mind thing, or I lost my ability to play the sport that I love. Now you're out there causing trouble, being too socially active in terms of leaving bars at 2, hanging out in the parking lots, doing things you shouldn't be, and never saying the night's over, that type of a thing. So it'd be this excessive delay of getting back into something that's productive, helping yourself, helping the planet, helping your family. And so these things are very common in the athletic world, high school, college, or pro sports, who are doing heroic things. And then that's eliminated in a matter of a minute. And now what do they do that evening, the next day, and for the next 60 years? And if they live, it can often be a dark story of substance abuse, of physical abuse on themselves and others, and losing their mind, basically losing their functionality of their brain, which I see just in my group of contacts in lovely Santa Barbara. I've seen over the past 20 years, lots of dysfunction in the brain, lots of autoimmune problems that are, you hear about on a regular basis. So kind of people not aging well, not developing mind, body, and spirit wellness and maintaining that as they age. Over to Fletch for some comments.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're writing something that addresses that, Sifu, because I see it in my practice, in psychiatry, because I treat and talk with and help a lot of athletes. And some of them are high performance athletes. Can't name them obviously, but they're there. And I've wondered in your interviews so far, Sifu, with the people that you have that you found who have had this kind of experience, both as parents of athletes and the athletes themselves once they're grown up, what kind of patterns you found?
The
about
pattern.
why,
Go ahead. You want to finish
about
that?
why they might put down the sport that they had loved so much, and why their lives get kind of whopper-jawed.
Yeah. So the first book, Sedentary Nation: History of Physical Movement, from the hunter-gatherers through the couch desk and farmers to the industrialists to the couch desk and car potatoes. So we just have become sedentary as a society because we left the farms and we left physical jobs, and we don't sweep anymore, we vacuum, and we don't walk anymore, we drive. And we don't, even if we're going to the gym, how many of us can lift a 40-pound saddle or more up on top of a horse that's 15 hands high. Not many people can do that, but our great grandparents who were more petite than I was, let's say they were 140 pounds in the 1800s or in the Great Depression, would be my grandfather's era. They could do that. I mean, it didn't matter how thin they were, they could do that. They were functionally fit because they moved all the time. They knew how to do that. We're chair bound and couch bound. So then I go to the aging athlete. And what I found is that 90% of these high performance people in any sport or any physical activity, high school, college, and pro sports, Broadway dancers, general contractors, the postal workers, the day they leave their physical activity, no matter the age they leave, 90% become mostly sedentary for the rest of their lives. So I'm thinking, boy, this is strange. We as kids couldn't wait to move. Most of us were hyperactive sitting in our desks at school. Then I get to this raising a child athlete story. And what I said is, you've got to teach kids, like when we were little, about recreation, joy and movement, all these different sports that we just played because our friends played them. We didn't have this one sport focus with one personal trainer. So at age 10, we were like being trained like Roger Federer when Federer was 22. So we just did this play, this joy and movement, this recreational activity. And then, later in our lives, yoga came along, and that taught people about mind, body, and spirit. And then there's Ayurvedic medicine. And then people were going to life coaches, psychiatrists, and sport and psychologists. So they learned all these things kind of late, but then they started teaching these kids, like Tiger Woods. He's the perfect example. High performance training at age 5, at age 8, at age 12. And then this kid with these big shoulders and a pretty good sized body has got all this torque on his joints, and he's practicing excessively. And before he had his car accident, he had 15 to 20 surgeries from neck down to ankle. So this is what the world has wrought. And I think if I date it back, which I do in Sedentary Nation, it comes from warring nations like the Spartans, where they had their own standing army, and the men were expected to come home with their shield or on their shield, like their friends carrying them home dead. So it's this excessive survival war, militarism type, win at all costs. And that allows the college coach and the high school coach to keep their jobs, the pro coach as well, the sports psychologist as well. It's an excessive performance based on results. And in the pro golf tour, how many people can live off of the amount of money that you make? It's the big money, it's less than 50 people. A survival income, it's probably less than 500 people in the United States that can live off of that income without any sponsors.
Yeah, that jives with my experience with extreme athletes. I've had several pro golfers, describe their experiences, and they kind of fall into two groups. There's people that love the game, and they're able to make a living. It's not great, but they get to play their sport, and they may not excel at it to the degree that they're in that top 1%, but they just love the game, and they play for the love of it. And I wonder about parents that, and I've had a few describe this, a gymnast who was an Olympian, and that person was driven by parents that wanted their own expectations and hopes to be met through their children. And this woman was in that category, and it got her in some trouble. She began, basing her life and her identity on her performance, and lost her love of gymnastics until years later, and then circled back around through actually yoga. And She has a smile on her face again. She loves it. And those old associations of expectations, she's been able to shake off, but it's taken years. Your body, of course, takes a toll too, and that's another factor. And if you have an ambitious coach, that has a factor. So a quick story here. So I go to college. I decided to go to college at the very last minute. Got into college, and and I had run cross country in high school and loved it. You get to kind of run through the woods, and it's like parkour. We had a really rough course in high school, up and down orchards, hills, that sort of thing.
Where was that?
So I get to college. It was amazing. And then we get to college, and the coach was all about winning, and he'd have a circle up and pray to win, to beat the other team. And that was his mindset. And everything was about winning. And, we overtrained. And what happened to me was I felt disillusioned. And a lot of the other, my teammates did too. And so the next year, there was no team. I quit. And so did a bunch of my buddies, because our coach at that particular college at that particular time, that was his single-minded goal, was to win. It seemed at all costs, looking at it through, an 18-year-old's eyes, 17-year-old's eyes, at all costs. And, all that glitters is not gold. And I felt that. And I never looked back.
There has to be a balance and a modality and a direction to get that balance. And so nature, I think, provides some good examples of how to find that balance and what we're supposed to do when we've achieved some goals. So if we go back in time, and we can go to the videos now on YouTube, the Serengeti, we look at the lions. I think the lions are a good example of a performance athlete who, once they achieve their goal, they sit around and lick their paws and play with their kids, because they've got this big water buffalo, and the whole pride is living off of that, right? So they may go out and hunt, and the females, you have a few herders, and you have a tackler, and the assistant tackler is over here to being one of the herders. And so they're the ones, of course, these linebacker tackling type females, they're the ones who get injured the most. And when they get injured, that's it. When they have a big slice open by an antler or a horn, they're done for. And then the pride walks by, takes a look at them, maybe says one goodbye, and that's it. That's the law of the jungle. And then the human being, if you think of the Oglala Sioux or some of the Indian tribes, we can easily see what they were doing in the 17 and the 1800s with the roaming buffalo herds, 40 million buffalo, maybe 60 million in entire North America. Once they got that kill, before horses, they had to do it different ways, but once they had horses, you can spears and arrows, they take down that buffalo or two or three, and then they go back with those carcasses, and then they can do all kinds of building with the different parts and eating with the other parts and smoking them. And so you have all this time that we could consider downtime. We consider knitting today as downtime, whereas in our grandmother's generation, she would have been making sweaters, making wedding dresses, etc. So maybe it wasn't the same downtime that we might have today. But if we don't have that look, in my opinion, back towards a heritage and nature and the slower pace of life, you have the hunt that's dangerous, and it's very active, and it takes a lot of rigor and vitality to do that, a lot of planning and skill. But once we do that, we have this food, and we don't need to accumulate like one of the billionaires or trillionaires of today. We don't need to accumulate that much stuff, that much wealth. Like Tiger is a multi-millionaire, right? And so he was kind of living above the law, and he was allowed to do, and he's still to this day allowed to do things that you and I, if our kid did that or our brother did that, we'd consider it reprehensible. So that's where I look to find the answers. And I'm happy people like you are writing books. And I hope that people like you bring in some of these accounts of ancient wisdom, which it sounds like when some of the spiritual practices of, Zen Buddhism, these types of things. I'm sure you can give examples in your books about lifestyle and philosophy and grounding and relaxation that come from a lot of these ancient traditions that are rich in wisdom.
Yeah, Sifu, I'm glad you're speaking to that. And it seems like, Sifu, what we're really talking about is isolation versus community as playing a role in how we develop as athletes, how we age, how we even begin as athletes, and what that looks like to be an athlete, and how much a part of life, that activity that you love, you fold into your life and what you're taught about it. Yeah, I got over the years, I always get invited back to, it's called Tribal Canoe Journeys. And you may have heard of it because some of the tribes from here in Santa Barbara are also involved, including the Chumash. And it started over 30 years ago, and it was founded by a Phil Red Eagle, who I got to know through some of my work. And for the past 6 years, minus COVID, where we didn't paddle, I've been participating in my canoe family with Tribal Canoe Journeys, and we paddle for like 2 to 3 weeks and stop along the coast, going up and down Washington coast, Oregon coast, Vancouver, Canadian coast. And we all, over the next 2 to 3 weeks, come from all over to a final meeting place. And every night we stop at a different place, a different reservation to gather, to dance, to celebrate, to tell stories, and to just be together. And it's a sober event. And the intent is to teach our kids their history, and their family's history, and our history, collectively. And it's this beautiful combination of a physical activity that you train for. You train and train and train, like for 6 months before the paddle. And then you're there, you paddle, and you're folded into this community that is, it's very nurturing. And it's a sober event. And we take care of each other as our canoes and between our canoes. And there's inclement weather, you have to watch out that you don't get run over by tankers, that sort of thing. And that folding in of the individual with a community in that particular activity, which is physical, it's motion, and it's repetitive, there is this beautiful symmetry and balance between the individual and the community. And we are never allowed to forget it.
Wonderful. Yeah, when you were speaking, Fletch, I thought of the things that people seek, and we keep hearing the word trauma. We all have trauma. And if you have trauma, you naturally want to seek therapy. So the idea of life being a healing journey with, certainly there's development, there's self-mastery, there's productivity, there's downtime, there's all these wonderful things. But I can tell you as an athlete, I always am working on injury prevention or injury healing. And so one of those things is always going on, or both. And then, and then if I'm sedentary, like on a long airplane flight, I feel rotten. And so I know that if I didn't do what I do therapeutically and athletically, I would be suffering from debilitation, which I think, since maybe 10% or less of the people in the world are not sedentary, either by work or by side practice. So those other 90 that are in these sedentary activities, maybe that's America. Maybe that's America. That's 90% sedentary. They're suffering, and so mind, body, and spirit. And it's so obvious when your posture's bent over and you've got a funny gait that your life is causing trauma, and you've got debilitation. So over to you, Fletch, for some thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that, you know, in some of your work and in your books, you look at, you know, our physical lives from a historical perspective. And, you know, I look at my life and, you know, our lives together. Here you've written 2 going on 3 books, or is it 3 going on 4? Anyway, Sifu, yeah.
Three going on
That's a lot.
4. You give me the next title, I'll start work on it in a few
All
months.
right. Yeah. And that'll make you saddle sore, as my dad would say. He was an old cowboy. And it can do more than that. You know, it starts to wear at your posture and, you know, cause a lot of these issues that people have, especially back problems, neck problems, their whole spine. And, you know, we're all statistics to some level. And I watch myself. And after a day of being in the saddle, you know, and doing counseling, especially if it's on, camera, if it's remote, which a lot of it is. And I miss the times when it was easier to go into the hospital and work with all these different people in community and work with other doctors, the nurses, you know, the aides, the medics, the ER docs, and you know, the patients themselves, and go from room to room and place to place, and just visit with people. In one sense, it's become easier because here we are able to do telemedicine, which is a lot of what I do. But I miss that physicality. So what I'll sometimes invite people to do is get up and stretch or get up and dance, you know, and have that physical expression of what's going on inside you, and what's going on beside you, and what that looks like. And it's been a riot. And then they invite their friends, because I invite friends and family to get tuned in, you know, with the person who's struggling with whatever issue they have. I say, invite whoever you want. It could be the barista next door. It could be you know, a spouse. It could be kids. It could be parents, community, and they're moving together, you know, and we're conversing together. And even if it's like us, you know, we're remote and, you know, we're using Zoom, people get into it. And there's that natural animation. And I think there's a natural tendency for the mind to loosen and the body to loosen, of course, when you're able to move around, even if you're kind of toggled to a chair, like you and I are to a degree, probably me more than you. So historically, you know, it's working against us to have these sedentary jobs, but on the other hand, there are workarounds. I don't know, Sifu, what do you think? You know, what are some of your workarounds? Because you live a life, you're a manifest of, you know, what you're describing here.
Yeah, I shared quite a bit about this on a call where we were talking about wellness for the sedentary desk worker, postal worker. I still consider postal workers sedentary. They're at a counter and they're doing this all day. They're not getting their heart rate up. They're not doing anything like this. They're not doing a lot of balance poses. And they're oftentimes, if they're back sorting, their head would be down, up, and it tends to be not using your feet and your hips to do that donut move. It tends to be a upper back from the mid torso up. And so we're really getting hunched over. And, you know, the cartoon versions and some of the actor versions of Ebenezer Scrooge, where he's kind of blocked up in his shoulders and you know, and doing a lot of this, that's kind of how they portray him and some of these other, the Grinch is also an Ebenezer Scrooge knockoff.
Like this.
Yeah, they're raptors, you know, we live like raptors where, you know, and that's actually better than a lot of other people. The postal workers movement is better than a lot of other people, because if they're standing, that could be good. It's not always good, but it could be good. And so what I do for myself, and I'm a long, thin person who needs a lot of structural support, don't have a lot of big muscles, you know, somebody like Bo Jackson, you know, just without lifting any weights, he's got structural support galore, 215, 220 at age 22. And so just completely different animal than me. But he was so high performance that he was able to pull his hip out of his hip socket when somebody was grabbing onto his leg. And that was the end of his career in professional sports. Just imagine the strength. You and I could probably do it, but we probably wouldn't. We would probably go down with the tackle. He knew he had the strength to pull out of there, so he did it, and he just pulled his body apart. So interesting stuff. But back to what I do. I do tennis ball rolling every morning for about 6 to 8 minutes, and I've really perfected that. So if somebody wants a coaching session on that, go to sifuslim.com and I'll dial you in. I don't have time to do a massage appointment frequently, and it's expensive. I love them and I think they're wonderful, but you got time and money to factor in. What if you could do it yourself to a certain degree in 6 to 8 minutes and get a lot of benefits? So I start with that. I do functional floor exercises about 4 days a week. The other 3 days I'm outdoors doing the standing version of those functional exercises from neck to feet. And all of that, those two things combined with some yoga and some Pilates type thing, that takes me 40 to 50 minutes. And that's every morning I'll do something like that, either 4 days a week in here. And I'm watching a documentary, or I'm watching one of Fletch's discussions. If you're at TED Talks or wherever you're speaking, I might watch one of your talks. And so I'm constantly learning. Can I get into a Zen state when I'm constantly learning? I actually feel that I can get into something that is similar to that, because it's so me and it's so grounded. And I know that I've got this little routine since I've been doing it for decades. It just all works, that I can put in some information and follow along with Fletch and still be in this kind of flow. Just imagine the Wing Chun master, he's moving and he can still be in that meditative state, right? So I'm doing that. And then I go outside and I'll do some outdoor activities. And here I'm in Florida, I'll jump in the ocean, swim some laps. And that whole shebang will take me an hour and a half to 2 hours each and every morning. And then during the day, I do Mackenzie stretches, which if we're all leaned over forward, this one gets us standing and our postures back, giving you a different way to do that. So I encourage people to tap into me or go online and look up Mackenzie stretches throughout the day. Door frame stretches, a lot of that, pulling myself back, moving myself, jumping ropes, skipping, dancing, whatever I can. Every bathroom break, I try to do 3 to 5 minutes. And then I may do a sport during the day like tennis or hiking, or I may just do a half an hour of stretching at the end of the day. I would say on the average, I'll do 4 to 5 days of sports in between the morning and the evening program. And that keeps me going in the sport type of thing, and hiking and tennis and golf. These are all fun things to do that don't injure me. Whereas jujitsu, which is one of my #1 go-to activities over the past 20 some years, that's the one where I can risk injury, because I can do it to myself, or the person I'm training with can do it to me. It's just the way it goes. Most people in jujitsu know mangled fingers, mangled neck, a knee to the jaw or the nose. It just happens. We're not trying to do any of that, but it just happens. And so over to Fletch for some of his thoughts on my daily program.
Yeah, my daily program has changed so much. I guess I fall into the loose category of aging athlete, air quotes, because I am 68. And it often takes the form of the attitude I come into it with. The physical activity is usually in the form of play, and that cross country was that for me, as I talked about in high school. And I did some track and field, and I wrestled. And then in college, I walked a lot. I did cross country that first year, and after college, I lived in Japan for a couple of years, and they had a running group. So I'd run with those folks in this little town called Tanahata, population 600, deep in the mountain and coastal range of northern Japan in Iwateken. It's kind of like living in Washington State, similar climate. And so I ran, and they had a lot of mountaineering, and in the winter, they'd climb these mountains in the winter with what we would consider today, or in our culture, kind of primitive equipment. The snowshoes were made of bamboo, and the ice axes were bamboo, and we had a great time. And we sat once so we could figure out how to get down from wherever we were, whatever summit it was, especially during snowstorms. They loved it. I loved it. And these are my fellow teachers. I was there as teaching English in their public school system, and that was my routine. And my routine has changed depending on where I am. If I'm in Santa Barbara here, there's they've got a stadium for the Santa Barbara Community College, and I'll on tiptoes run up and down the stadium stairs and just go slowly enough so that I never stop. And then afterwards, I mean, the ocean's winking in the distance. It's right there. So I'll jump in the ocean, then I'll come back home, and maybe do a little gardening with a smile on my face, do a little bit of writing, catch up on refills, write a couple of letters, that sort of thing to do with work. And, that's a day. When I'm in Washington, I'm taking off in the hills after work for an hour or so, and hiking and climbing, that sort of thing with friends. But it's almost always in community. It depends on where. If I'm on the road, I'll find something to do. But wherever I go, I usually like a rhythm, and and have it to be some kind of a pattern, something that I do every day or every other day, and those rhythms are sacred to me, and they really help my mental outlook too. And it sounds like you work, by way of rhythms as well. You have a routine that you vary, but often it's the same. And there's an oscillation, and you look forward to that during the day of here's what I get to do. At 5:05 p.m., I'll light out, and I'll go and climb with some friends for an hour. Go back, go swimming. Next day, I'm out at the stadium, running on my tiptoes, which I do now because I've had a hip replacement. I've had a back surgery, and I've had knee surgery, and I've had a hernia repair. But that was all from having done mixed martial arts for 6 years back in my 40s. And it was probably a mistake in some ways.
You were doing cage fighting and training?
Yeah, it's fighting in the ring, and mixed martial arts in the sense that a lot of the disciplines are involved. Most of my training was in Toshokan karate, but they're the locks, the throws, the sleeper holds, everything like that was all thrown in, and I learned all of them, to a degree. And I was on the circuit for 5.5 years. I don't think I quite made 6 years, but I was.
You mean you're
an
traveling to
athlete.
compete?
Yeah, not far, just local, and Western Washington, which is where I was at the time. And it was just because it's something my daughter was into, and she asked if I, hey Dad, you want to go to this gym? And I said, well, I'm too old to do that sort of stuff, but I'll help you train. And then 2 weeks later, hey Dad, this would be a good father-daughter thing to do. I thought, oh my, I will not say no to this, So I got into it, and we practiced our forms and that sort of thing. And I quickly found out what's a fighting gym and dojo, and this is what they did. So I did that and loved it for the most part, and most of the matches were fine, but about every other match, something would break, a nose or a rib or a toe, or or another rib, that sort of thing. And my bones were getting brittle in my late 40s, so I finally, after 5.5 years, had to stop.
I hear you. I'm so glad I stuck with jujitsu because I liked all the training we did in Jeet Kune Do and karate and these other things that I did. But I certainly am not built to get walloped in the side of the head. I have a long neck. I have not these big, occipital region. What is this called right here over your eye? The
Frontal bossing. Yeah.
frontal bossing.
Yeah.
And I don't have a lot of protection for like my eyes and my nose. I certainly don't like getting hit in the nose, but my Sifu, Mike McDonald in Santa Barbara, who's got a cage and MMA training and jujitsu and this and that, he has no cartilage up here. He's got, his mom is Filipino and he got that nose from his mom. So you can hit him in the nose and it's just like you and I getting hit in the forehead. It's like, oh, okay, you knocked my head back. I'm a little wobbly and now ready to go again. Whereas if you and I, with the European nose, get hit here, this puppy is going to be tweaked, or he's going to be bloody, or he's going to be making us tear and want to tap out if we have the wherewithal to tap out.
Yeah, that my nose is gone. It stands out, but it's very flexible for that very reason.
Before we go, I wanted to finish up on one thought, and then we'll wind down on Tiger Woods. So I was thinking, as me being a fitness, wellness, and life coach, and you being a professor and a psychiatrist, and all the other things that you do, having a rational conversation with Tiger and his parents when he was 17 or 18 about some of the stuff that I talk about in my book on raising child athletes, they might not have. They might not have gotten it. They were saying, we're programming him to be a Michael Jordan, to be a Kobe Bryant, to be a Michael Chang. We're going to program this kid to win. And that's his goal, to keep his mouth shut, to win victories, win medals, break records, and get sponsors. And that's going to be his life. And I'm starting to think that when we talk about the tribal cultures, and I'll pop up a video here, the only thing that I think would have had a natural way to influence Tiger is the medicine man of the tribe, or the martial arts guru, like a Yoda type person, this Wing Chun master who says little, but changes the paradigm, changes the neurology and the unconscious mind through a proper invitation to Tiger and his parents and a different wavelength. And so this is one of my favorite videos. It's called Dances of Ecstasy. And this is just a little clip of it, but they go around the world looking at tribal cultures. You mentioned rhythm. So some of the cultures use the dancing with the drums, and other cultures do, the person goes into different altered states of mind on the ground when they've got some sort of a protozoa or something that they can't get rid of. The whole tribe or some of the tribal elders will be around that person, and they'll shake and convulse basically, and that's their part of their training. So anything to share before I click play on this?
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I spent several months in a remote village in central Nigeria, and got to experience some of that firsthand. Yeah, I can't wait to see.
Okay, let's take a look here.
When we move into a state of energy, we release ourselves from the boundaries as we know them. And once we start to work into the quantum world, we go beyond rhythm, we go beyond form, we go beyond space. We find a flow, and we find the flow of the rhythm of the universe, which is something that I think ancient peoples really understood. And dance performed a function of taking people to the mystery place. The shaman dances to find the answers.
Kotoga chaniga ginga chaniga ulitia. Ulitia ka ahun toga gahin. Akui ke akui.
Music, dance, rhythm, ritual gets us beyond little local consciousness. Rhythm sets up another rhythm in the brain. It sets up another rhythm in the body. Change the music, you change the mind. Change the music, change the rhythm. And already consciousness then goes into another stratum, another level, another possibility.
So Tiger Woods going to some ceremony like this at a young age or now in his coming up on age 50, I think that would be a helpful thing. And I think the shaman world, the healer world, the medicine world, it's becoming vogue like yoga has grown. I think this type of thinking is becoming more prevalent. And I think people will find that the vibration is more powerful than the pill.
There's a lot of truth, and that truth, it seems like, Sifu, keeps getting recapitulated with each generation, and it looks different. And then the next generation looks different again, then it looks different again. And I see a lot of people who are elderly, and they are, they're going to dance classes, they're learning salsa, they are doing qigong, they are, doing yoga, or even chair yoga. They're falling into some kind of a rhythmic activity that takes you someplace that's ineffable, and brings you to yourself in a way that is hard to quantify. But not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. And that's an example of that ineffable, that awakens our mind by a physical path. And it can go both ways, of course. And dance is definitely one of those ways. It's definitely worked for me. Yeah, I was going to ask you, Sifu, is dancing something that you folded into some of your routines?
Yeah, definitely. What I tell people about my workout, which sometimes I call the maintenance workout, because I'm not trying to get somewhere, I'm trying to stay somewhere. I've been fit most of my life. And so at age 18 to 28, my highest performance years, I wanted to maintain as big a chunk of that functionality and endurance and strength as I could. So it wasn't to go, up to here. Like a lot of people when they're 22, the bigger, stronger athletes, they want to bigger, stronger, faster. So you're already, let's say you're juicing in college. What are you going to do now? Juice more, eat more, and get more therapy and press more weights. And so a lot of people do this. And that's part of the story of the aging athlete. They do things that are so hard, and they transform themselves to such a degree that when they leave, like the average lifespan of an NFL person now is probably 2.5 to 3.5 years, somewhere in there, for the different positions have different longevity. But once they get out of that and they press so hard year round for all those years, they've got so much pain, just all the weights without getting hit is painful, right? And the recovery. Once they get out of there, they go, super mom or dad, they go couch potato, or they become super employee or owner of a sports bar or a stockbroker. They become super excel at the next thing. And so my thought for me, and when I tried to do that bigger, stronger, faster, is I got clunkier. My elbow joint hurt, my neck hurt, my thighs were always inflamed. And I said, why am I doing this? I mean, I'm an ectomorph, thin guy. I want to be back to where I was when I was 18 and 19, where I could do chin-ups and swim and whack the tennis ball with fluidity. So that's what I went back into: more body weight, more functionality, more flexibility, and more fun, and less being the trapezius up to here guy that I thought I could try to get to, which of course didn't work.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Does dance itself, it sounds like a kind of a dance because there's a rhythm to it and a lot of the things that you're describing. And I guess I've found that, that rhythm is in some ways really sacred. And, there is a rhythm, a cadence, and it takes you someplace, outside yourself, and then it brings you back to yourself. Hard to explain, but I know how I feel when I'm finished, and the science is there. After that kind of physical activity that involves cardiovascular, cognition improves for the next several hours, and long-term cognition improves um, for months to years. The studies are out there. Not that we needed studies to show we already know in our own bodies, but people do that,
We're susceptible to new studies. And matter of fact, I jokingly told a famous doctor here in Florida about 8 years ago, I said, the news media never met a new study it didn't like.
Right. Yeah. No matter how badly it might have been done, too.
They love the title "New Study Finds," and they can fill in, and then people read the article. But you asked me about dance, so I didn't finish that thought. I got into my transition from trying to get to be superhuman to back to functional, happy human, more like Jack LaLanne than Arnold Schwarzenegger. And so I was always someone who felt the rhythm. And so when I was in 6th grade, at the dance, I saw the kid who was in 8th grade, who was the best dancer, saw what he was doing. And I started, copying his moves, and I found that I could do them better. And so some people are natural in certain things. So dance is one of those things I'm natural in. So how I do it now, I don't go out to clubs and practice my moves. I do dance as part of my fitness. So my workout, either maintenance workout or martial artsy calisthenics with Michael Jackson mixed in. So Michael Jackson and I have very similar body structure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little heavier and about an inch taller. And it's because I weight train. But if all I did was dance and run, I would be as thin as he was. And then at age 29, I became a professional mascot up in Northern California. And so I got to put those moves into a fun activity to do on the side of my normal job. And I was doing hip cardio funk aerobics at the time. And I was going out to dance at the clubs a little bit here and there. But now at age 61, I would say that the only thing that I have gained on since my late 20s and early 30s is dance. It's the only thing I've gotten better in. And it's not from doing it more. It's from kind of doing all this other physical training with a lot of movement involved and knowing my body, knowing how to do the little types of moves and putting that with the music.
Right.
Like I didn't grow up with a hip hop family. So I got into hip hop in my late teens at college, 18 through 22. And so I got into hip hop late. But that stuff, having listened to music all those years, has kind of put that rhythm into my body. And so I know how to snap to the beat. And so that's kind of the coolest thing about being old and gray, is that my dance can still impress the high school and college crowd.
That's the best. Yeah. And it involves ecstasy, it involves joy, it's ecstatics, it's peripatetic, it loosens the cognitive realm too, as Aristotle would say. It's peripatetic, and involves movement and reversal and coming back. And it makes its way into most forms of philosophy, that movement and the sacredness of it. I was thinking of David Bohm, an astrophysicist who won the Nobel Prize, kind of a lightweight, he talks about, how movement is so much a part of not just who we are as humanity, but that to make sense of the known universe and to account for what we don't know about the universe, there has to be some kind of movement. So it's in the largest sense universal.
Do you think, we talked about the movement, and we'll stick the word vibe in there, and frequency, and the drum beat, and the unconscious mind, and the DNA's vibration, whatever we can throw in there. Is there a way to invite productive oriented people, performance oriented people and their kids into such a practice? I know they know Yoda and Qigong and all the things that go into that Yoda and Luke Skywalker relationship. You know, Luke wants, you know, is seeking violence and retribution, and Yoda's saying, calm down, there's a way to do it with the Force, right? Is there a way, with all this exposure we've had from that side of things, to invite in 2024 a parent or both parents and a young athlete into such experience, or how might you introduce that conception to them?
Well, I was thinking about the role of a parent and their kid and that relationship, or between any sort of a mentor and a mentee, you know, a territory that I'm sure you're familiar with. And if a parent is really succeeding, what they're doing, and this is an opinion, is they are seeing who their kid is and reflecting back to that kid what they see on the most basic level in all of these different contexts, and honoring it. And sometimes it looks like discipline and it's firm, and sometimes it looks like you know, the touch, the love, the cuddling, and sometimes it looks like, you know, competition, and sometimes it looks like play. And play is an element that I feel like for a lot of families is sorely absent. And it is a very essential part of a self-expression, that kind of play. And what is play, you know? And in a nutshell, I think encouraging play is, what you're doing is encouraging mistake making, and having that be an interesting and an integral part of what it is, you know, because when you play, you're not necessarily looking for perfection, but you are looking for something fun. Try this, try that, you know, do a little bit of this, do a little bit. Oh, that's funny. That didn't even work. What about this? Oh, I just landed on my head. That's even funnier. What about this? You know, and you're doing somersaults. And so play involves being a mistake-making fool. I think
And
that's
laughing
one of
at
the,
it.
yeah. And it's you can fold that in by whatever that looks like to each kid, or a mentor to his mentee. And it's serious, and it's also seriously fun. Yeah, I think that's an essential ingredient. What do you think? What should we add to the buffet? There's play. What else?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to take, like in Tiger's case, a family who says, we want to have a super kid. And he was on television. I think I read a report yesterday that said age 2 hitting a putt, but I'll have to look again, because that sounds awful young to be standing and hitting a putt age 2, but maybe it's correct. You know, the idea of grooming making basically a cyborg out of a kid, and then he's on his own once he's got the money and the managers and the accountants and the attorneys, and he's this freewheeling person who's hyper focused in one area and chaotic in the other part of humanity. And there's a lot of fallout there, and there's really no need. I mean, if you could ask him to go back 10 years ago and say, would you risk in 1 year 150 million of sponsorship for having a decadent social life when you're married with 2 kids? And I would guess that a rational person, or even a semi-rational person, would say, no way I would do that again. You know,
Yeah.
screw that thing up. So that's really, I'm trying to figure out how to invite people into just this examination of of life so that they can tell, you know,
Yeah.
what are some of the long-term consequences of these things?
Yeah, I suppose some of it is by example, and some of it involves an invitation of trying something a little different, and having that be something that feels valid to the person. Maybe you know something about this. There was a time when Tiger was he changed his swing,
Yeah, yeah.
and
After winning several majors, they had a swing change going on.
he had a swing change, and people talked about it. I remember it, and I remember thinking at the time, and I still wonder, to get to the place where he said, you know, I'm going to change my swing. How much trial and error, and how much of the element of play was involved in that decision, and what was it that kind of loosened the status quo enough for him to say, you know, this is something I really want to try. I want to change my swing.
I have the answer for that because my friend up in Sacramento, when this was going on, he was a scratch golfer and standout in high school. And I played high school golf and was working on my game quite a bit in the 90s, or when this went on with Tiger. I left Sacramento in 2003, so it was somewhere between, I would guess, 2000 and 2003, the swing change went on. And we were at first joking about it because if you're winning majors, you won the US Amateur once or twice, and you played at Stanford 2 years, and you won the NCAAs and this and that, you're thinking this guy's nuts. But then I read the article and saw some documentaries about the swing change, and Tiger's mind and his parents' mind, the number one driver in his life, I think, has been performance, winning at all costs, you know. So they knew that this older pro, gray hair, knew what he was doing, and he convinced him. It was very easy. It wasn't many sentences. He's doing this, and he's erratic, and it's going to hurt his body. So the number one reason was performance. Number two was it was keeping the old swing was going to hurt his body more. And when you're 20 to 23 in that era where he made this change, you're not thinking about injury if you're me, but if you're Tiger Woods and you already had a surgery or getting close to surgery by that time, you were thinking about, hey, I can't keep doing these 3 large buckets in the morning and then playing 27 holes and then doing chiropractics and weight training and having a long career like Jack Nicklaus and these other greats who preceded him. So that's the story that I think sounds accurate. But if somebody has something else they want to share about the swing change, please share in the comments down below.
Yeah. And you know, at some points, a lot of us go through swing changes in our lives, of one form or another. And I guess people come to that different ways, and thank God there are mentors out there like that have the long game in mind. Like it sounds like Tiger had one of those mentors.
He's had a lot of good mentors, and they last. Jack Nicklaus kept his pro Jack Grout for as long as Jack Grout was 25 years older than Jack Nicklaus and was a touring pro, but not to the same degree. And they would do spring training every year where they go, let me check your grip. I think Jack grew up in Ohio, and the Jack Grout was at the club, and he said, let's check your grip, let's check your swing takeaway, you know, all these things. They did spring training every year. And the other thing that Tiger didn't do that Jack did is Jack Grout said, once you've got the move, chipping, you know, on the green with a 7-iron, you've got that move down, you've done it 5 times, you don't need to practice it anymore. Whereas I went to a course near San Diego 4 winters ago, and I saw the Japanese female juniors there. And when I went and left to play the first 9, she had this, the bag of balls, drawing a blank on the ones that you can self pick up, shag bag. she had that out and she was hitting 5-irons onto the green over and over. And when I came back after 9 holes, so 2 hours, she's still doing the same shot. And that's the modern excessive lifestyle, in my opinion, whereas Jack Nicklaus was taught from a young age, do this until you get it, and then we're going to work on something else. And so I think Jack had it dialed in. And one of the reasons, besides being a big, strong, natural athlete with a good mind, why he was so good, because his coach dialed him in, I think, in a right way, whereas Tiger was hitting 3 buckets or more, 2 hours of whacking the ball with his very rapid hip and shoulder turn. It's so much tension and pressure on your joints to do that. I don't know. I think that's the one thing I would have told him, is do more short game work, more qigong, more functional training, more do the psychology, do all these other things, but don't blast balls for 2 hours 7 days or 5 days a week. It's just not good for you.
Yeah, it doesn't sound good.
We should wind down, and on winding down, I'm going to wind down with, you mentioned joy and fun, so I'm going to put Rickson Gracie up here, who's the Bruce Lee of the last 30 years. And on my LinkedIn page, there's a picture of me and Rickson after I was done surfing and he was just about to start down in Ventura, California in 2005. But I said to him in our short meeting together, I said, how about, I'm there with a friend of mine, and I wish we had a recorder of this. It would have been great. I said, what's the secret of life? Because I'm asking, the Yoda, the Bruce Lee of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, whom everybody thinks is a cool customer. What's the secret of life? And he says to me, Sifu. This is before I was Sifu, so I'm just putting this in there. I used to be Enrique. So he said, Enrique, because that's how the Brazilians would say. Enrique, the secret of life, my friend. He puts his arm around my shoulder. I'm glad he didn't give me a toss into the concrete. He's extremely capable of doing that. The secret of life is to be silly. And he said, no, forget that. The secret of life is to be silly all of the time.
That's a great way to end it. Yeah, it does. That playfulness, that silliness it's the best.
So, Fletch, do you have a website or any profile that you want to share?
There's ftaylor.com. And it's just a website that shows a little bit about what I've done and what I'm working on, at least in terms of the creative writing element. And it's check it out, see if you're interested. And I've had it up for a couple of years, and I keep adding to it. It's been fun.
Wonderful. So we look forward to connecting with you and hearing more of your story and more of your observations. And we ask people to please like and consider subscribing, and take a look at our websites. Mine is sifuslim.com. And please share any questions or comments you have down below this video. And if you have any things you want us to talk about the next time, the healing arts, the mind-body connection, daily activity, sedentary lifestyles, self-mastery, all these things, please share what you'd like to hear more about, and we'll see if we can put that together. So, Fletch, I'm so glad we did this time today. Namaste, shaloha, and look forward to reading your next book.
Doi tashimashite. It was enjoyable. I loved it. And we'll keep being silly and keep being playful.
Sayonara, doi tashimashite, konbanwa, about 6 hours from now.
So desu ne. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, brother. Aloha.
Yeah, aloha.